What if the biggest stars in Hollywood weren't hiding glamorous lifestyles, but terrifying secrets no one was ever supposed to uncover? Behind the red carpets, flashing cameras, and thunderous applause are stories of betrayal, deadly scandals, twisted family lies, shocking crimes, and dark truths buried for decades. Some of these secrets destroyed careers, others shattered families forever, and a few are so disturbing they sound more like movie plots than real life. Once you hear what really happened, you'll never look at these legends the same way again. Number 1. Jackie Chan. Everyone knows Jackie Chan as the fearless superstar who laughed in the face of danger, shattered bones for the perfect scene, and became one of the most beloved action icons on Earth. But what if the greatest stunt of his life wasn't performed on a movie set? Long before he threw his first punch on camera, an astonishing family secret had already been written into his destiny. It sounds too unbelievable to be true, the son of a spy and a notorious drug smuggler. For decades, even many of his biggest fans had no idea that the real story behind Jackie Chan was every bit as thrilling as the films that made him famous. The truth remained hidden until much later in his career. Jackie's father, Charles Chan, had secretly worked as an intelligence officer for the Chinese nationalist government. His mother, Li Chan, lived a completely different life, becoming involved in drug trafficking before fate threw them together. Their first encounter wasn't romantic in the slightest. Charles arrested Li during a drug investigation, yet life took an extraordinary turn, and the two eventually fell in love, married, and started a family. Years later, Jackie would discover that the incredible risks he embraced throughout his career almost seemed woven into his bloodline. The fearless attitude that made him a global legend may have begun long before he was ever born. When Jackie finally learned the truth, he admitted that it completely changed the way he viewed his parents. Behind the ordinary family image he had always known were two people who had survived war crime, political turmoil, and unimaginable hardships before giving him the chance to chase his dreams. Suddenly, every impossible stunt and every life-threatening leap felt like just another chapter in a family story already overflowing with danger. Sometimes the most unbelievable action movie isn't filmed in Hollywood at all. It's hidden inside the lives of the people we thought we knew best. Number 2. Robert Downey Jr. Hollywood loves a comeback story, but almost no one realizes that Robert Downey Jr. was pushed toward his darkest chapter before he was even old enough to understand what was happening. Long before he became Iron Man, before the Oscars, before billions at the box office, there was a little boy whose childhood was quietly slipping away behind closed doors. The heartbreaking truth wasn't that he chose a life of addiction. According to Robert himself, that path began with the person he trusted most. It's a revelation so disturbing that it still shocks fans decades later. Robert has openly shared that when he was just 8 years old, his father, filmmaker Robert Downey Sr., introduced him to marijuana and later exposed him to alcohol. His father would later admit it was a terrible mistake, saying he believed it was a way of bonding with his son. Instead, it became the beginning of a nightmare. As Robert grew older, experimentation turned into dependency, and dependency nearly destroyed everything. Arrests, rehabilitation, lost movie roles, and public humiliation followed one after another. At one point, Hollywood had almost completely written him off, convinced that one of its brightest talents had reached a tragic ending before his career truly peaked. But this story refused to end in darkness. After years of battling addiction, Robert rebuilt his life piece by piece, earning back the trust of filmmakers and audiences alike, before making one of the greatest comebacks the entertainment industry has ever witnessed. Even so, he has never hidden where his struggle began, reminding the world that a single decision made during childhood can echo for a lifetime. Behind the smile of one of Hollywood's biggest stars lies a painful lesson that success cannot erase, proving that sometimes the deepest scars are created long before the spotlight ever finds you. Number 3. Elvis Presley. The world crowned Elvis Presley the king of rock and roll, a man who could make stadiums erupt with a single smile. Millions dreamed of being close to him, believing he had everything anyone could ever want. But behind the dazzling fame was a side of Elvis that remained hidden from the public for years. It wasn't another story about his music or his legendary performances. It was a deeply unsettling truth about his private life that continues to divide fans and historians to this day. Despite his overwhelming confidence on stage, Elvis struggled with profound personal insecurities, especially when it came to romantic relationships. According to numerous biographies and accounts from people within his circle, he preferred pursuing very young women, often seeking those with little or no dating experience. While some of these relationships were legal under the laws of certain places and times, others have remained highly controversial, leaving a lasting stain on the image of one of music's greatest icons. As the years passed, this lesser-known chapter of his life became impossible to separate from the legend itself. The contradiction is what makes Elvis's story so haunting. On stage, he radiated confidence, charisma, and irresistible charm. Away from the spotlight, however, he was a man wrestling with fears and emotional struggles that few people ever saw. His extraordinary talent changed music forever, but fame could never silence the doubts that followed him throughout his life. Sometimes the brightest stars cast the darkest shadows, and the truth behind the crown can be far more unsettling than the legend the world chooses to remember. Number 4. Charlize Theron. Before Charlize Theron became one of Hollywood's most celebrated actresses, she survived a night so horrifying it could have been mistaken for the climax of a crime thriller. The woman who would one day stand on the Oscar stage was once a terrified teenager, trapped inside her own home, listening as violence spiraled out of control. In just a matter of seconds, everything changed forever. One gunshot echoed through the house, ending one life and forever altering another. It's a tragedy Charlize rarely speaks about, yet it remains one of the darkest secrets behind her remarkable success. Growing up on a farm in South Africa, Charlize witnessed years of turmoil caused by her father's alcoholism and violent behavior. In 1991, after returning home intoxicated, he threatened both Charlize and her mother, Gerda Theron. Fearing for their lives, Gerda acted in self-defense and shot him. Authorities investigated the incident and determined it was a justified act of self-defense and no criminal charges were filed. For a long time, Charlize chose not to discuss that devastating night, publicly carrying the emotional weight in silence while trying to build a new life thousands of miles away in Hollywood. Instead of allowing that unimaginable trauma to define her, Charlize transformed pain into determination. She forged an extraordinary career, earning critical acclaim and becoming one of the industry's most respected performers. Yet behind every glamorous red carpet appearance lies the memory of a frightened young girl who witnessed the unimaginable inside her own home. Her story is a powerful reminder that some of the strongest people aren't born fearless. They become fearless because they've already survived the kind of nightmare most people could never imagine. Number 5. Woody Harrelson. Hollywood has produced countless unforgettable villains, but Woody Harrelson grew up knowing that the most terrifying character in his life wasn't on a movie screen. It was his own father. For years, Woody believed his dad was simply absent from the family. Then a shocking truth exploded into the headlines, revealing that Charles Harrelson wasn't just a criminal. He was one of America's most infamous contract killers. Overnight, the rising actor found himself linked to a story darker than anything Hollywood could have written. Charles Harrelson drifted in and out of Woody's life before eventually being convicted of multiple murders. His most notorious crime came in 1979 when he was found guilty of assassinating federal judge John H. Wood Jr., the first federal judge to be murdered in the United States during the 20th century. During his years behind bars, Charles made bizarre claims, even insisting at one point that he had been involved in the assassination of President John F. Kennedy, although investigators found no credible evidence to support that allegation. While the sensational headlines captivated the public, Woody was left carrying a burden no child should ever face, forced to watch the world remember his father for violence instead of family. Rather than allowing that legacy to define him, Woody carved out a completely different path. He became one of Hollywood's most respected actors, earning acclaim for performances that showcased warmth, humor, and extraordinary talent. Yet no amount of success could erase the uncomfortable reality of his family history. It's a chilling reminder that none of us get to choose where we come from, only where we're willing to go. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't winning an Oscar. It's refusing to become the person the world expected you to be. Michael Caine. For decades, Michael Caine believed he knew everything about his family. He grew up thinking he had only one brother, built an extraordinary career, and became one of Britain's greatest film legends. But after his mother passed away, a revelation emerged that turned his entire life upside down. Hidden behind years of silence was a family secret so carefully protected that not even Michael's own father knew it existed. It wasn't just another forgotten relative. It was an entire chapter of his family's history that had been erased. The truth was that Michael had an older half-brother named David, born years before his parents' marriage. His mother had kept David's existence hidden because he suffered from severe epilepsy and spent most of his life in a psychiatric hospital, where treatment for neurological disorders was often handled at the time. She visited him quietly over the years, but never revealed who he really was, fearing the stigma surrounding mental illness and the difficult circumstances of his birth. The secret remained buried for decades, and Michael only discovered he had another brother after his mother's death, leaving him stunned by how much of his own family history had been concealed. Despite the shock, Michael chose compassion over anger. Instead of dwelling on the years that had been lost, he came to understand the impossible choices his mother had faced in an era when families often hid painful realities from the outside world. The discovery didn't change the love he had for her, but it forever changed the way he understood his own past. Sometimes the greatest mystery isn't hidden in a detective film or a spy thriller. Sometimes it's locked inside a family waiting a lifetime before the truth finally finds its way into the light. Number 7. Cary Grant. To the world, Cary Grant was the definition of elegance, charm, and Hollywood perfection. But behind that unforgettable smile was a childhood built on one devastating lie. At just 9 years old, the little boy who would one day captivate millions suddenly lost his mother without warning. His father told him she had gone away to recover by the seaside. Later, the story changed again. This time, he was told she had died. For more than 20 years, Cary carried that heartbreak, believing he would never see her again. But the truth was far more disturbing than death itself. When Cary was 31, his father finally confessed the secret he had buried for decades. His mother, Elsie, had never died. She had been committed to a psychiatric institution while Cary was still a child and remained there for years. Rather than tell his son the truth, his father fabricated stories to erase her from his life reportedly, so he could move on and build a new family without complications. Horrified by the revelation, Carey immediately traveled back to England to find his mother. Against all odds, she was still alive. After decades of separation, mother and son were finally reunited, though no reunion could ever return the years that had been stolen from them. The discovery haunted Carey for the rest of his life. Friends and biographers believe the abandonment he experienced as a child shaped many of his insecurities, relationships, and relentless search for affection, despite becoming one of Hollywood's biggest stars. The world saw a man who seemed to have everything, yet deep inside remained the little boy who spent decades mourning a mother who had never truly left him. Sometimes the cruelest secrets aren't buried in crime files. They're hidden within a family where the truth can take a lifetime to come home. Number 8. Matthew Broderick. One wrong turn. A split-second mistake. 2 innocent lives gone forever. For Matthew Broderick, the darkest moment of his life didn't happen under the bright lights of a movie set. It unfolded on a quiet road in Northern Ireland, where a vacation with his girlfriend suddenly became an unimaginable tragedy. At the height of his rising fame, the beloved star of Ferris Bueller's Day Off found himself at the center of a heartbreaking accident that would haunt him for the rest of his life. In August 1987, while vacationing with actress Jennifer Grey, Broderick was driving a rented BMW when he accidentally crossed into the opposite lane and collided head-on with another vehicle. The crash killed Anna Gallagher and her mother, Margaret Doherty, who were traveling in the other car. Matthew suffered serious injuries, including a broken leg and collapsed lung, while Jennifer escaped with relatively minor injuries. Authorities initially considered a more serious charge, but it was later reduced to careless driving, resulting in a fine. The legal case eventually ended, but emotionally, it was only the beginning. Broderick later admitted he had no memory of the impact itself, yet the weight of what happened never truly left him. Although he returned to acting and continued building an impressive career, those closest to him say the tragedy forever changed him. Every achievement that followed was accompanied by memories of the day 2 families' lives were altered forever. Unlike many Hollywood scandals fueled by gossip, this was a real human tragedy with consequences no one could undo. Sometimes the most painful burden isn't a prison sentence or public outrage. It's waking up every day knowing that one irreversible moment will always be part of your story. Number 9. Bob Hope. For generations, Bob Hope was America's favorite gentleman. He entertained troops during wartime, made families laugh for decades, and built the image of the perfect husband with an impeccable reputation. But behind the polished smile and endless applause was a double life that Hollywood insiders whispered about for years. While audiences admired a devoted family man, those behind studio doors claimed they knew a very different Bob Hope. The truth, when it finally surfaced, threatened to shatter one of the cleanest images in entertainment history. According to numerous biographies and accounts from people close to the industry, Hope engaged in countless extramarital affairs throughout his career. One of the most talked about involved rising actress Barbara Payton in the late 1940s. Hope reportedly rented her an apartment where the two could meet in secret, believing the relationship would never become public. But when the affair ended, Payton refused to stay silent. Years later, she described their relationship in a sensational magazine interview, exposing details that contradicted the wholesome image millions had embraced. Suddenly, the man celebrated as the ideal husband was facing stories that painted a far more complicated picture. Even after the headlines faded, the contrast between Bob Hope's public and private lives continued to fascinate historians. His extraordinary career and charitable work remain undeniable, yet the scandals remind us that fame often hides truths carefully protected from the spotlight. Sometimes the most convincing performance isn't delivered on stage or in front of a camera. It's the role a celebrity plays for the entire world, while guarding a secret life that no one is supposed to see. Number 10. Rose McGowan. Before Rose McGowan became one of Hollywood's most outspoken actresses, she escaped a world that many people would struggle to believe even existed. Long before she stepped onto a movie set, her childhood unfolded inside a secretive religious cult where fear, manipulation, and abuse were disguised as faith. While millions later saw her as a fearless star, very few knew she had already survived a nightmare before her acting career had even begun. Looking back, Rose would describe that chapter as something darker than any horror film she ever appeared in. Rose spent part of her early childhood in the Children of God movement, a controversial religious cult that has faced widespread allegations of child abuse, sexual exploitation, and the mistreatment of women. According to McGowan, she witnessed disturbing behavior from a very young age as members promoted so-called free love and exercised strict control over their followers. Realizing the environment was becoming increasingly dangerous, her family eventually left the group, allowing Rose to begin a completely different life. Years later, after achieving fame in Hollywood, she spoke openly about those experiences, explaining how they shaped her determination to stand up against abuse and exploitation wherever she encountered it. Escaping the cult may have ended one nightmare, but it also forged the resilience that would define the rest of her life. Rather than allowing the past to silence her, Rose transformed years of fear into a powerful voice that challenged some of the entertainment industry's most influential figures. Her journey proves that the most terrifying prisons aren't always built with walls. Sometimes they're built with fear, and walking away from them requires more courage than any blockbuster hero could ever imagine. Number 11. Anthony Perkins. To millions of movie fans, Anthony Perkins will forever be remembered as the chilling face of Psycho. Ironically, while he terrified audiences on screen, he spent much of his real life hiding in fear himself. Behind the polished image of one of Hollywood's most respected actors was a deeply personal secret that remained buried for decades. It wasn't a murder mystery or a psychological thriller that haunted Anthony Perkins. It was the constant fear that the truth about his private life could destroy everything he had worked so hard to build. During the height of his career, Perkins secretly dated fellow Hollywood star Tab Hunter, but in an era when same-sex relationships could end an actor's career, the romance was carefully hidden from the public. To everyone else, they were simply close friends. Perkins later married actress Barry Berenson and started a family, yet speculation about his private life never completely disappeared. Then, in the early 1990s, another devastating blow arrived. After tabloid rumors began circulating that he had HIV, Perkins underwent medical testing and learned the heartbreaking truth: the reports were correct. Determined to protect his family and preserve his dignity, he chose to keep his diagnosis almost entirely private while continuing to work for as long as his health allowed. Anthony Perkins passed away in 1992 from complications related to AIDS, and only after his death did the full story become widely known. His final years were marked not by scandal or self-pity, but by extraordinary courage in the face of a terminal illness he endured largely out of the public eye. Behind one of cinema's most unforgettable villains was a man carrying secrets, fear, and unimaginable loneliness. Sometimes the most heartbreaking role an actor ever plays isn't on a movie screen. It's pretending everything is fine while quietly fighting the hardest battle of all. Number 12. Stan Laurel. For millions of fans, Stan Laurel was the lovable half of one of the greatest comedy duos in film history. His clumsy smile and innocent charm made audiences laugh through some of Hollywood's earliest classics. But once the cameras stopped rolling, the man behind the laughter was said to be almost unrecognizable. Hidden beneath the cheerful persona was a turbulent private life filled with alcohol, explosive arguments, and allegations so disturbing that they threatened to destroy the image people adored. It was a side of Stan Laurel that the public rarely saw, and one his inner circle desperately tried to keep from becoming front-page news. The darkest chapter surfaced during Laurel's divorce from his third wife, Vera Shuvalova. Court records and contemporary reports described a deeply troubled marriage, with Vera accusing Laurel of heavy drinking and violent behavior. Whether every detail unfolded exactly as described has long been debated, but the allegations were serious enough to send shockwaves through Hollywood. As part of the divorce settlement, Vera agreed not to publish or publicly discuss many aspects of their marriage, ensuring that much of the scandal remained buried for years. The contrast could not have been more striking. On screen, Stan Laurel brought joy to millions with timeless comedy. Off-screen, his personal life was clouded by heartbreak, addiction, and controversy that few fans could have imagined. Even today, historians continue to separate the beloved entertainer from the troubled man behind the character. Sometimes the biggest surprise isn't that a comedian could make the world laugh. It's discovering how much pain may have been hiding behind every smile. Number 13. Melissa Joan Hart. For an entire generation, Melissa Joan Hart was the girl next door. As the lovable star of Clarissa Explains It All and Sabrina the Teenage Witch, she became the face of innocence on television. Parents admired her wholesome image and young fans wanted to be just like her. But behind the bright smile and family-friendly reputation was a secret life that few could have imagined. Years later, Melissa would reveal that while America saw the perfect teenage role model, she was quietly living a very different reality. In her memoir, Melissa Explains It All, Hart admitted that fame exposed her to a wild Hollywood lifestyle at a young age. She wrote openly about experimenting with drugs, partying heavily, and making reckless decisions that stood in sharp contrast to the characters she portrayed on screen. While her television image remained squeaky clean, she privately struggled to balance sudden fame, constant public attention, and the temptations that came with celebrity life. Her candid confessions surprised many longtime fans who had never suspected such a dramatic contrast between the actress and her famous roles. Unlike many celebrities who spend years denying rumors, Melissa chose to tell her own story before anyone else could. By confronting her past openly, she transformed what could have remained a hidden scandal into a lesson about growing up under the unforgiving spotlight of Hollywood. Sometimes the sweetest faces on television are hiding battles that no audience ever gets to see until the cameras stop rolling. Number 14. Ann Miller. To audiences around the world, Ann Miller was the dazzling queen of Hollywood, tap dancing while lighting up every stage with elegance and effortless charm. But behind the glamorous costumes and radiant smile was a tragedy so devastating that it remained hidden from the public for years. While fans admired her fairy tale career, Ann was quietly living through a nightmare inside her own marriage, one that ended in heartbreak no mother should ever have to endure. After marrying wealthy businessman Reese Milner in 1946, Ann soon realized her husband had a dangerously violent temper, reportedly linked to a serious head injury he had suffered years earlier. When she was 9 months pregnant, an argument allegedly escalated and Milner pushed her down a flight of stairs. Anne fractured her back, but still went into labor shortly afterward. Despite enduring unimaginable pain, she gave birth to a baby girl named Mary. Tragically, the infant survived for only a few hours. Instead of revealing what had really happened, reports at the time claimed Anne had been injured in a car accident, hiding the horrifying truth from the public. For years, Anne carried the grief in silence, while continuing to entertain audiences with the same bright smile they had always known. The woman who seemed to dance effortlessly across Hollywood's golden age was in reality living with a loss that words could hardly describe. Sometimes the brightest performers hide the deepest pain, proving that behind the applause can lie a story far more heartbreaking than anyone ever imagined. Number 15. Joan Crawford. Before Joan Crawford became one of Hollywood's most celebrated leading ladies, whispers about her past followed her everywhere. She built an image of elegance, power, and sophistication, but hidden beneath the glamour was a rumor so explosive that one of Hollywood's biggest studios was allegedly willing to do almost anything to erase it. Whether fact or legend, the story has haunted Crawford's legacy for generations and remains one of the most controversial mysteries of Hollywood's golden age. According to longtime Hollywood rumors, before achieving stardom, Crawford appeared in at least one explicit film, possibly while she was still very young. As her fame skyrocketed, it was widely claimed that MGM tracked down every existing copy to prevent the footage from ever resurfacing and damaging the studio's newest star. Historians have never found conclusive proof that the film existed, and no verified copy has ever been discovered.